Hey guys, what's up? This is Amber with Helps To, and you are watching or listening to The Creatives Conversation. So, it is again an episode all by myself because Gabby, our director, has abandoned me and gone to California. But, that's all right because I've got some stuff to share with you guys and we're going to have fun with this anyways. So today I'm going to be talking about something that hits really close to home because it's something that I struggle with, and that is how to be productive when you're working from home. So I'll start by saying that I've actually been working remotely for Helps To for the last 3 years now. And so, a lot of people working from home for them didn't become a thing until COVID hit. And that was only, one and a half year, like 1 year or 1.5 years ago. And so it's fairly new to a lot of people just because everyone was used to going into an office, sitting at their cubicle, doing their work, having their boss close by, having their coworkers close by, having meetings in person, all these things. And so I know this video probably would have been a little more relevant if it had come out back when COVID first hit. But, I still think that there's so much to learn because as someone who's been working remotely for 3 years, I still have so much to learn about how do I be better at this? How do I become more productive and more focused and more motivated and all these things that are really hard when you're not actually sitting in an office with that, accountability of like being around your team and being around your boss and all those things, And so I'm just going to give a few tips of how I stay motivated and how I stay on task when I'm working from home, which I do pretty often. We have a co-working space at Helps To. We go work over at PlexPod sometimes, which is really cool. So if you're in the Kansas City area, check it out. But in addition to that, I also work from home a lot of the days of the week. Just depends on the week. So just from that, it brings up a lot of challenges and a lot of things that I've just learned that work and things that don't work. And so the first thing is I'm going to give some advice on how to stay on task. So one thing that I do that has really helped me, and I have like the privilege, I guess you could say, of having access to my boss a lot because Gabby is my boss and we're also roommates and we're also friends and we also hang out. And so, and also like it's a small company. So she doesn't have to manage a ton of staff. So whenever I need something from her, she's pretty prompt to get with me and meet with me or get back to me. So I actually meet with her every week and list out my top 3 priorities for the week of projects I'm going to work on. But if you don't have the privilege of meeting with your boss one-on-one every week, which most people don't, just make those top 3 priorities for yourself. Figure out for yourself, okay, what are the 3 projects that need my attention the most right now? Look at your deadlines, look at what's going on throughout the month, throughout, whatever the quarter, however your job separates things. And figure out, for every single week before your week starts, just first thing Monday, figure out what are the 3 things that I should really be prioritizing this week. And then break that down into daily goals. And so we actually here at Helps To use something called Asana, which has been amazing for working remotely. And so this is not a paid ad, but if you're listening and you're working for Asana, we would love to be sponsored by you because we use Asana like crazy at Helps To. And it really saves us from a lot of miscommunication, a lot of misunderstanding as a team, but also as individuals. It just helps us to stay on track with what we need to get done. And so what that does is Asana basically, you can create tasks and give them deadlines, and you can do all these things to just organize your tasks as best as possible. And so every day when I start work, the first thing I do is open up Asana and look at my tasks for the day. So what is it that's overdue? And, sometimes I try to avoid having anything overdue because the goal is to check everything off each day. But, there will inevitably sometimes be things that are overdue. So I look at those first. Those are the highest priority, and they come up at the top of my list because that's the way I choose to have it organized. And then after that, what's due today? And then I start looking ahead. What's due tomorrow? What's coming up, towards the end of the week? What's coming up in the next few days, in the next few weeks, just so that I'm aware of like what I should be working on and where my attention should be, so I'm not off doing some extra project or something that's not really a priority when there's something else that really needs to be taken care of. And one of the great things about creating these daily goals and making it, that small of a threshold, and not just like, I need to finish this by the end of the quarter, is you get the satisfaction. And I feel like every human in the world enjoys this feeling. You get the satisfaction of checking something off your list. When you get it done, you get to check it off and move on, and you get that every single day, and it just feels great. I feel like it's like a little pat on the back, like, yeah, I finished, it's done, like, it just feels good. And it probably is psychological too. Like, I feel like there has to be something related to dopamine or something like that whenever you get to check something off the list. But don't quote me on that. I'm just making a wild guess. But it makes sense since all of us humans seem to love it so much. So I'll tell you a little bit of the breakdown of the way that I manage my small and large goals in Asana. Just in case there's any of you out there who either are like Asana users, or if you're thinking about becoming an Asana user, just this is the way that it works, that I make it work for me. So the biggest thing is that every single task that is assigned to me or that I assign myself, I always give it a deadline. And I try to be realistic with the deadline, but at the same time, like, make it so that I remember it so it doesn't fall way down at the bottom of my priorities. And then I also set up, depending on what it is that I'm doing, like if I'm managing social accounts, that's something that doesn't go away after one time. We finished publishing our book, so a lot of my tasks related to that are off my Asana list. I checked them off, they're gone. But when I'm managing social accounts for clients, that's a reoccurring event. I have to do that every single week. I have to check in on their messages, check in on their comments, see their stats. I have to create new content for them. I have to upload new content for them. All these things that, I do on a weekly basis and not just one time and then it's over. And so I definitely utilize the reoccurring task option on Asana. So you can do that pretty easily just by setting up your task to repeat itself. You can choose even which day of the week you want it to repeat itself. So if I always upload videos on Tuesday, then I can just set it on Asana to always notify me on Tuesday to do it. And so it's really useful to set up reoccurring tasks. And then if you have one project that's bigger and it requires a lot of little things to be done within it, there's actually this option in Asana called subtasks. So when you're actually like looking at the one task, the big task, and you click on it, there's an option to add subtasks. And so, the creating of our book was definitely a good example of that, because that was not just like one thing we had to do. That was one big thing with a lot of little things that followed, And so it was helpful to have that so that it didn't feel overwhelming that, I just had this thing in there that's like, finish editing the book. It was like, finish reading through, because I helped edit. So I put on my task list, like within the subtask, like finish editing chapters 1-3. And that had a deadline. And finish editing chapters 4-6 and so on. And so that's really helpful to just make yourself feel at ease and not as overwhelmed by any big or daunting tasks. And also it helps keep all the details in place because you have all the details recorded of how you're going to break down that specific task. And another thing about Asana that I really like is that it allows for easy delegation when you're working with a team. And so I can go in, and since I'm added on our Helps To team, I can go in and create tasks for any one of my team members. So if we're in a meeting and Gabby tells me like, oh, I need to remember to fix that bug on our website. Can you remind me? Instead of sending her another email, and she gets so many emails all the time, don't we all? I just go into Asana and I create her a task that says, fix the bug on our website, and put a deadline on it that's pretty soon so she remembers that it's urgent. And, she remembers to do it because it's on our task list and it shows up at the top. So it's a priority. And, it's just as easy as that. Also, when you're working with teams, Asana lets the other people on the task, that if you're collaborating with other people on a specific task, it lets them know when you've completed it. So whenever I check off a task that both Gabby and I were working on, or both Grace and I were working on, or anyone else in the team, they get a notification that it's done so that they know, okay, that's off my plate. Like, we're not worried about that anymore. And it's just super helpful for communication without having to send, like I said, infinite emails, remember to do this, or did you do this, or, those types of emails. It kind of just cuts all that out. And one last little thing that I love about Asana, and it's just a little thing that brings me joy, is whenever you finish a task and you check it off, it pops up with these cute little images and GIFs that are just celebrating the fact that you finished something, and says way to go, or like a little confetti popper or something like that. And so it definitely adds to that effect of the satisfaction of completing something is on top of that, there's a little celebration on your screen. So it's good positive reinforcement. So that's how I stay on task and how I prioritize my tasks for working from home. And like I said, if you don't use Asana, I highly recommend it, but if you don't want to pay for it, because there might be a free version, I'm not sure, but we use a paid version. So there's other options, of course, if you don't want to use something like Asana that are free. And so, you can just look into that on your own. I don't actually know any off the top of my head, but, I'm sure if you do a little bit of online research, you can find some type of task management system that will help you stay on track. And so another thing that has really helped me, as a remote worker, is having a dedicated workspace at home. So having the same space that you go to every single day, to work helps your brain subconsciously associate that area of your house with work. So you automatically start to think productively when you're in that area. And so our brains, they associate things with other things without us knowing it, And so our brains associate our bed with sleep, and the couch with recreational activities, and so on. And so, if you're trying to pull your laptop into bed with you and try to sit on the bed and do work, or sit on the couch and do work, or even the dining room table, or areas like that where there's not really a lot of work normally going on in those places, it kind of makes it harder for you to focus, and it kind of makes it harder for you to, you might be fighting tiredness or just distraction or all that if you're in those areas. And so, it's important that you have a space in your house, even if it's just a desk in a room. Right now I have a desk in my bedroom, so it's not like the whole room is an office space because I don't have enough room for that in my little apartment. But just having a desk, that's my dedicated workspace. My brain associates that with work and productivity. So when I'm sitting there, I know I'm not here to, rest. I'm not here to do anything else. I'm just here to work. And so that's actually really helpful for just staying on task and staying focused while you're working from home. And when you create your workspace, it's really important to make sure that it has what you need. So you don't want to overdo it with putting stuff in your workspace, especially with things that could be distracting. And so just keeping it simple is really good, and trying to avoid clutter is also extremely helpful. Just making sure that you only have the things that you need there, but definitely keeping the things that you need. I know I need my laptop charger at my desk and something to write on in case I get an idea and I need to jot it down real quick. Those types of things, but I don't necessarily need a whole bunch of other stuff. And so I keep it really simple, and it just helps to avoid distraction, to avoid clutter, because again, clutter can subconsciously make you feel chaotic inside. And so just clearing all that up is really helpful for just work productivity and workflow. And another thing that I think a lot of people learned, and actually I have a story about it because I know a lot of people have learned this since working from home in 2020, is that having a good chair to sit in for hours is essential. Because if you're working from home and you're sitting in just like the dining room table chair and you're sitting there for 8 hours at a time because you're working all day, you're going to start to have some back pain. You're going to start to have some, it's just going to be uncomfortable. You may not feel as like, you might start to get like pain, and you just might start to get restless and all these things. And so, my mom actually had to switch over to working from home in 2020, and she was working at our dining room table every night in just a wood chair that went with the table. And she started to experience a lot of severe back pain and discomfort and just like limited mobility from that. And she decided like, enough is enough. Like, I think this is coming from the chair because I'm sitting in it all day long and it's hurting my back and it's not doing me any good. And so she went online and ordered herself a new desk chair, and like one of those office chairs, the ones that are actually made to support your lower back, the ones that are made to support your posture, all those things for working and sitting in all day. And when she went and read the reviews on the chair, she saw so many people saying the same thing, that, they were working at their dining room table, they were sitting in a wooden chair or whatever type of chair it was, and it was hurting their back and they needed more support. So they got this chair and it really helped. And so just having that is really helpful to make your work experience more pleasant and also not as distracting, because you're not distracted. If you have a good chair, you're not distracted by the pain you're going through, by just the discomfort, and you're just able to focus on your work. And a couple more things about when you're working from home and you have other people in the house especially, is for when you have meetings online. It's super important that when you have meetings online, you pay attention to what's behind you when you're setting up your workspace. And so the first thing I will say is try to avoid backlighting, because if you're turning your camera on for your meetings and the light from your window or whatever is coming in from behind you, it'll be really hard for the people in the meeting to actually see you. You'll just look more like a dark, shadowy silhouette. And so try to maybe even flip it so that the light from your window is coming in on you. Or, even if it's just like a darker part of the room, but there's no window behind you, it's still better than having the light behind you and nobody can even see your face. And the other thing is to avoid areas of high traffic where people pass through behind you a lot. So if your desk is facing the wall, but it's like close to, I don't know, the kitchen, and someone has to walk through the area, walk behind you to get to the kitchen, that's not going to be super great for online meetings, because people are going to see a lot of people passing behind you and it'll distract them on the Zoom call or whatever it is you're using. But also it'll be distracting to you, just having all that commotion going on behind you. And, it's just not as beneficial as finding an area where there's not going to be people walking behind you. Even if it means just turning your desk around so that your back's to the wall, it'll still be better than having people walk behind you and be a distraction. And another thing that I'm going to address, because I'm just talking about all my personal struggles today with working from home, with things that I've learned personally from doing this for 3 years and from helping people who have had to figure it out in 2021 or 2020 since the pandemic hit and they've had to start for the first time. One of my biggest struggles is honestly that I'm an extrovert, and working from home is very draining and taxing for me. And so I've found a couple of things that help. It's really hard when you're an extrovert. Let's just say that. Let's just take a moment. I feel like on the internet and just in general in life, people are always sympathizing with introverts. And I understand being an introvert is hard when you don't want to be around people when they're draining, and maybe you have social anxiety or whatever. But what people don't really talk about is the fact that extroverts in 2020 went through a lot. Like, it was really hard for us to have to be isolated, to be home and all this stuff. And so, a work environment can actually be a source of energy and a source of excitement for an extrovert. Like, I know for me, when I'm around the buzz of people, it keeps me active, it keeps me awake, it keeps my brain alert, and it keeps me just happy. It just makes me happy to be around people. And so working from home is definitely a challenge for people like me. And I just want to tell you a couple of the things that I've discovered that help. And again, it's not perfect. Like, I've still struggled to this day with like, I just wish I could be around people, But when I am working from home, these things help me. So the first thing is joining team hangouts on Zoom. So if your team or whoever you work with, your office, if they offer any type of team hangout, any like team cocktail hour or anything where people are working, but they're also like on Zoom shooting the breeze and all that stuff, like, it will be extremely beneficial for you to join that stuff, because it's not just about the being around people in the sense of just having meetings all the time that keeps introverts energized, but it's also just being around people, like, and being able to have conversation, And so just having that, and I know a lot of teams and a lot of jobs are offering that now because they realize what isolation is doing to their employees is dropping productivity a lot. And so, if your job offers that, I would definitely suggest that you join in on it. And if they don't, you should try to initiate it, just bring it up to your boss or bring it up to your coworkers and see if anyone likes the idea. And if they do, like, just start it. Just start having 1 hour on Tuesdays or whatever it is, right before you get off work, where you have a social hour with your team and you just catch up and all that stuff, because chances are good, if you weren't working remotely before and you are now, then you already have a connection and maybe camaraderie with your team, and you're a little bit involved in their lives. So just having time to just catch up and be people and not just workers is really important. And then another thing that helps me is I put on non-distracting videos in the background. So it's important that you're not putting on like a TV show or anything that's going to catch your attention too much. But there's videos on YouTube of just like people talking in coffee shops, like not their conversations recorded, but it's just like the background noise of like the espresso machines and the conversations all happening in the coffee shop, and the buzz of like just people and life happening in the coffee shop. And so just something like that, as silly as it sounds, where it's like you would never sit down and watch a video like that, just having that in the background while you're working can really just help your energy stay up when you're used to being around people, or you're used to just having an environment where there's a little bit more life than what you have at home. And then there's something else that I discovered in 2020 that really has helped me, and some people don't like it. I've put it on in the background before with Gabby at home, and it didn't really seem to catch her attention, but I like it a lot. It's walking tours. So it's just someone with like a GoPro on their head walking around in different touristy cities. And so, you can hear, like, as they're walking, it just has the background noise on of like what people are doing in the streets. You can hear cars driving by, you can hear people talking, people having conversation, people laughing and enjoying their lives because they're on vacation. And if you look up every now and then, you might see some beautiful scenery, but just having that background noise on of like people and commotion and all of that can be helpful if you're an extrovert and you're struggling with being home. And lastly, you can just put on music in the background, especially if it's higher energy music or something that's going to keep you awake and keep you alive. If you're really trying to lock in and focus on something, like a good instrumental would be probably more helpful, or if you're doing a lot of reading for your job. But, if not, and you can just put on more energetic music, that's definitely helpful for extroverts, just to have some noise, to have something to keep them, alive and active. And if you have the option, this is something that has been super good and helpful for me as a helps you employee, as someone who's worked remotely. Switch up your environment. And so, maybe some remote jobs require that you stay home and work. Like, you actually have to work from your desk, like especially if you have an office phone that's attached to your landline or whatever. Then you don't really have the option of working from anywhere. But if you do have the option, and and you feel comfortable with, if you're out of quarantine and you feel safe and in more crowded environments, go work at a coffee shop. I do this pretty frequently, at least once a week. I go to a coffee shop and work, just because I feel more productive there than I do at home. At home you can get distracted with like other things that you have at home, or even just making a lot of trips to the fridge. I know we all know about that one from 2020. But when you're in a coffee shop, you're in a set environment where, you just get your cup of coffee and you sit down and you get your laptop out and you just go to work. And it almost replaces the feel of going into an office. So it can be helpful for people who are missing kind of just being around people while they're working, missing just a buzz, a work environment. And yeah, there's also the option of co-working spaces. I mentioned before that at Helps You, we're part of PlexPod, and that's wonderful. We get like a lot of options in terms of like where we can go. There's rooms that are totally isolated and, no one will distract you when you really need to lock in and do something. But there's also common areas where you can sit with other people and kind of just be around more of a community. And so that's super helpful and super enjoyable even for us. We've made a lot of connections through our co-working membership. That's how we met Abraham, who was on our podcast a while back, was through our co-working space. And so you'd be surprised by just how much co-working space membership could benefit you. And a couple of things I will say, if you're going to go work somewhere else other than home, is to be prepared. And so there's just a few things that I've noticed are super helpful. One of them is, especially if you're going to a coffee shop, make sure your devices, whatever it is you work on, are charged up before you go, because it's not guaranteed that you'll get a spot by an outlet. And so I go to coffee shops all the time and look around the whole room, and everyone takes the spots first that are by outlets, because they want to be able to charge their laptops, their phones, their tablets, whatever it is they're working on. And so it can be really frustrating if you are like low on battery, or you have a dead battery and you can't work there, or you have to go somewhere else. So make sure that you charge them up. I just charge mine overnight when I know I'm going to go somewhere the next day, just to make sure that I don't run into that problem. And then the other thing is that headphones are essential when you're going to work somewhere else, especially somewhere where it might be more crowded, like a coffee shop, because you don't know how crazy or loud the background noise is going to get. Sometimes it's kept down to a low rumble, but sometimes it gets really loud. And so just having headphones on hand can be helpful to block all that out if it gets too distracting. And, especially if you have meetings and you have like some type of headphones that can cancel out the background noise, that's the most helpful thing, so that people don't have to hear all the noise of the coffee shop every time you talk. So yeah, that's really all my tips. If you have any tips, if you've been working remotely or working from home and you have any advice for me, I would love to hear it, because, like I said, this is something I struggle with too. And it's something I'm still learning even after 3 years. And so let me know what you've learned and what you do to help you stay productive while you're working from home. And I just want to thank you so much for watching this video or listening to this podcast, depending on where you're coming at us from. Your support is what keeps us going, and we just love being able to share what we know here at Helps You with whoever wants to listen. So be sure and subscribe, or if you're listening on a podcast platform, be sure and set it up so that you get our next episodes downloaded so you can listen to them on the road or wherever you are. And yeah, that's really all. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.